Okay, we are live. Welcome to Bacon Bits. I see Professor F just jumped in. Hello, Professor.
Hey,
And we also have Daddy Warpig. We are waiting for our special guest, Roy Barron, who is working out the kinks of his first Google Hangout. So I anticipate he'll be jumping in any second now. Roy Barron is very serious about a viable third party and wants to be a third party candidate. So, sort of looking forward to hearing his take on some of the issues. I think in the chat he already vowed to destroy ISIS and make bacon the national food, so I'm okay with all of that. Um, so until Roy is able to join, why am I
hey,
getting
there
that?
he is.
ISIS and is he in? Food, so I'm okay with
There he is.
there he is. So Roy, how are you?
There he is.
ISIS and
Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Hello. Thanks for having me on the show today.
Well, thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it. I have to admit, Roy, I don't know too much about you, so maybe just start at the top and tell us who you are and why you would like to be the next president.
Well, I appreciate being on the show. I've spent 5 years crisscrossing America, living out of a backpack. That's how I got the nickname Backpack, and so that's where that came from. But I wrote a book called Looking Glass Shattered. It's on Amazon, Kindle, and paperback right now for sale, and it's all about my journey and staying all kinds of unusual things and homeless shelters, and I had to sleep out of a car. Unusual things like hostels, which to explain for Americans is sleeping in a room with a bunch of strangers in bunk beds with 20 people, and so campsites, and I've alternated between the wilderness and the cities. So it's quite a unique experience that I've had to really understand what the 99% of Americans are all about, struggling. I've had my own struggles financially and just trying to get by, picking up odd jobs as I've traveled from sea to shining sea. So this has been quite a thing for me, but I have a really strong quality assurance background. I work for Fortune 500 companies, federal, state, and local. So what I'm offering is very unique, is bringing quality to Washington, D.C., also common sense. And I was host and continue to be host of Voices of Global Freedom, a very popular, you can find it on the internet with YouTube, or it's on a bunch of stuff like iHeartRadio, iTunes, and so forth. And I'm offering a lot of these luminaries that I interviewed. I'm calling it a dream team. A lot of generals, admirals, healthcare, education specialists. I'm going to bring them into the administration and offer them jobs and let them run with it. These are really good people that I know personally, and so it's all about creating the team that America really deserves.
So you're kind of running on the regular guy outsider platform. Is that how you see yourself?
Yeah, I do, and I'm putting myself out as a centrist candidate, which is quite unique. And everybody has a definition of each of these words, but in my definition, centrist would mean I'm choosing in the best parts of Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, and all the other types of ways. The Green Party. There's so many different parties. I notice you have the Logic Party. I would take the best pieces of the Logic Party. Um, I would definitely incorporate a lot of your ideas. I'm excited to hear more about the Logic Party as well, because I think that's what the centrist party is all about, is really looking at all the ideas. We're not set on generally specifics, but right now I want to emphasize that 70% of Americans are centrists, or they're somewhere in the middle, or they're independent. Those kind of words are kind of somewhat similar. And then it's the 15% on the left and 15% on the right that are messing it up for all the rest of us.
So Roy, have you ever run for anything before?
Well, that's a great question. I can't say I've run for something, but I have actually been. I work for the Centers for Disease Control, and I had to get a security clearance. I was the quality assurance department lead for that, and I worked on a lot of top secret types of stuff. So I'm very familiar with federal government. But to answer your question, no, I've never run for any particular office. But I'm huge quality guy, and Six Sigma, ISO 9000. So a lot of my ideas are about bringing quality to government, and I heard any of the other candidates with that approach, and a lot bringing in inspector generals, people that we already have inspector generals, but people are ignoring their reports, where they're saying these are the things that are wrong, auditing, and then we have these great congressional committees. I guess I'm saying that kind of sarcastically, because there are these oversight committees that we have in all these areas, but I never hear of them actually doing anything other than some soundbite where they're hoping to get reelected. When you see somebody in Congress making some jab at someone, but I never hear of anything actually coming from any of that. So quality is really crucial to government, and this is what we really need, so that we'll cut the bloated size of the government and bring back the United States to all 360 million Americans.
All right, well, let's tackle some issues then. Let's tell me about what's your stance on illegal immigration.
Well, I'm okay with immigration. I have a very simple policy, though. If you're 21st century ways and you're from another country and you have some skills and some benefits to help our country, we would consider having you in our country. So it's very easy. If you're from a 21st century kind of thinking, acting ways, that's good. But if you're from a 7th century or some other kind of archaic type of culture, and number one is those cultures are impossible to integrate or unite into our 21st century America, that's not the type of people we're looking for. And I've seen it personally, because I actually lived 2 months with an African tribal family, and I met thousands of Africans in the projects of Knoxville, Tennessee. So I've seen it personally with this guy named King Dang, who's working on a project to help the Sudan. So I talk about that because it's really important, as I'm the only presidential candidate who's actually lived with the refugees, and I've seen personally how they've gotten arrested. They're driving drunk. They're not following our rule of law, because they basically came from huts, and they would be much better off staying where they are. And so my policy is very simple. If you're 21st century, you can come here, and I can speak personally because I've lived. I have African friends and other people who I realized that these people have no business doing here. I do want to bring up a true story. There was an African guy from Sudan. He was actually living homeless here, really struggling. He just couldn't adjust to life here. It's so drastically different. Imagine living in a hut and you're spending your day hunting buffalo and chasing after things in a grass outfit, and suddenly you're transported here where you got to flush toilets, and there's a lot of stress involved in our society, and it's just not for everybody to be here. But true story was, he was homeless and he was destitute. He went back to Sudan after some time. Some people scraped together some money, got him an air flight back, and he became really successful. He actually got his own home. He came back to his own society, and now today he's a very happy guy. He's married and adjusted. That's where he really belongs. So a lot of the people that they talk about bringing here really are much better off and happier and successful in their own countries.
Now, just to be clear, Roy, you're not on any ballots anywhere. If you wanted to vote for you, you would be a write-in guy.
Well, at this current time, there's a couple options that I do foresee. One is I do have until August the 22nd as an independent candidate in Texas. I have a Texas driver's license, so I'd be running from that state. And 6 states, all you have to do is be a write-in candidate. So I'm covered for that. I believe Louisiana just made it so you could 42 states. I would have to the Secretary of State. I do need to find a vice president, and the rules are they can't be from Texas. They would have to be for another state. That's just the rules. I didn't make them up. So there is a very remote possibility that I'd have to go around to the other 40-something states to their Secretary of State and cross all the T's and dot all the I's. So it is possible, but I'm also throwing myself as a very remote possibility, because I think the chaos with the Trump and the Hillary, they're such a polarized candidates, and there might be a chance that either a Republican or a Democrat party might pick me up as a candidate. I know that sounds like a miracle of miracles, but you never know. So I put myself out there. If they're fed up with those two choices, they've got their own huge baggage. So we'll see what happens.
Professor Danny Warpig, do either of you want to make your pitch to be vice president for Roy?
No, I'm too busy.
You're too busy.
I'm afraid that would violate my staunch not Warpig platform I've been not running on for the last many, many months.
Anybody never Warpig? Is it hashtag
Yes.
never Warpig?
Anybody else but Warpig. Not Warpig 2016. There's a hashtag. You can check it out. I am on the record for many, many months as not being the man you want in the White House. More importantly, I do not want the job, and so I am not. I'm not going to accept any notion of nominations. If I am nominated, I will ignore it.
Isn't that the guy we want the most, though? The guy who doesn't want the job?
That's not my problem.
Professor, you've got to have some questions. Let's roll with the professor. Roy, Professor is an actual professor. It's not just a nickname. We weekly try to get him fired on this show. We've come close, I think, a few times. Professor, what's your alma mater? Where are you, Professor? What's the name of your university again?
University of New Mexico. We were just in the Wall Street Journal the other day. They talked about how the Obama administration was kind of incentivizing social justice warriors on campus. So that's actually the question I had for Roy. Have you been keeping track of the free speech problems happening on college campuses? And what's your opinion on that? I guess just free speech in general.
I'm glad you brought that up. It's a huge issue, and thanks for your question, and I really appreciate all that you do for our country, helping educate our kids. The free speech is a major issue right now on our college campuses, but what I see is a division, and that was one thing is that I'm promoting myself as a unifier and as a centrist, where I'm taking the best ideas of everything, but I do believe in free speech, but there is a fine line. And I also want to emphasize, I think a lot of people might not realize, is that some of these protesters, I'm not saying all of them, are actually getting paid. You can go to Craigslist ads. They're actually getting paid to protest. So that puts a little grain in the sand of, are they really protesting because they really know what they're, doing or holding the sign? Or are they getting, $10 an hour to stand outside with a sign? So right. I do want to throw that little wrench in there to just bring caution to the wind of what these protests are all. So that's important. It's important. There is a fine line. I came up with something recently I was talking about on social media, is that, for example, there was a punk kid in a school who purposely beat up a teacher to make a viral video. And I know a lot of this is new to even what we're doing right now to do this show. It's all groundbreaking, but in my opinion, that kid should have an extra sentence when it comes to the judicial matters, because the kid purposely beat up the teacher to get a viral video, and that's not freedom of speech. I mean, but the incentive for the kid is to drive millions and millions of views. So we have a whole new generation of millennials that are all trying to get these viral videos, and they're crossing the line. So I want to hear from people, about all lives matter or Black Lives Matter. I breathe all that in and say, I'm of the camp that all lives matter, but I also want to say there is a fine line where that kid that beats up a teacher just to get a viral video, they're crossing that line. That's not freedom of speech, and there should be some new laws on the books to actually make the sentence for that kid even stronger to prevent that in the future, so that other kids don't just jump on the bandwagon, start up all their teachers just to get viral videos. I mean, that's the line. So.
No, that's good. That's good.
Looks like in the chat they might want me for Vice President, Roy, so I'll throw my hat in the ring. And you know what? You don't need Warpig, because really, who needs the pig when you got the bacon?
Hey, Roy, can you say a little bit more about what it takes to actually run for president? Because I think with the two candidates we have right now, and because they are so polarizing, more people are thinking about running for president themselves, as you've done. And what are the steps involved in throwing your name into the hat, so to speak?
Well, that's a great question. Each one's distinct to actually be on the ballot. In an ideal world, and this is one thing I'm going to also work on no matter what, as president or not, we should be able to, from any state of the 50 states that we have, walk in the territories as well that can vote, and write in somebody's name. Right now, we can't do that. The Democrat and Republican parties have a really strong lock on what goes on. It's really not that needs to be really looked at and changed. It's one of the things that I would definitely change. So 6 states right now, 6 or 7, I think Louisiana just changed. So about, let's say, 7 states, you can literally walk into the voting booth and just write down someone's name into the poll. So you could write my name, Roy Barron, or Roy Barron on the ticket. The other 43 states or so, there's a somewhat of a process where you have to go to the Secretary of State, you have to show your vice president. So it's a more of a rigmarole kind of thing. So there's more steps involved, which, in my opinion, it shouldn't be like that, but that's how it is. You have to get like 32 delegates, so 32 people in the state that you're in have to agree to it. And so one of my friends, you can look him up, Tom Ufert. You might want to have him on the show also. He's running for president as well. He's a good guy. He's also from independent, and we're seriously looking at what's called TIPS. It's an independent party, a potentiality in the future, because we desperately need something more than just what we have on the plate. So each state has to be like that. So the main thing is I really need a vice president, and I'm be looking at someone who has a pretty well-known household name who would be willing to. It's a huge commitment for myself and the vice president. We've got a lot of work to do from here until August the 22nd. So it's still possible, but we're really going to have to do a lot of work.
Well, I'm not sure that I'm a household name. But wait, are you saying that if I'm the vice president, I have to travel around and meet these secretaries of states, and so I have to travel as your VP? Now, so what does your campaign financing look like? Because I'm not getting on another freaking train for the rest of my life.
Well, that's where one of the big issues is definitely I'm playing the lottery, the Mega Millions. So.
Oh, so okay, that's how we're gonna fund the campaign.
Well, I do actually have a crowdfunding. I was hoping it would take off. I did put out, there is something on Indiegogo, and with a $2 million limit. And so if I got some traction from that, that would be an amazing way where I could actually run for president, have a chance, but based on people paying $5 or $10. And there was a famous governor, Buddy Roemer, who actually won governor of Louisiana. Recommend everybody look him up. He refused to take any donations over the $100, and he refused to take any corporate money or special interests. Great guy. I really like what he did. So he actually won, and he got somewhere around 1 million people to give him $100, and that was enough for him to get over the edge. So it would be a fantastic thing, especially with crowdfunding being the way it is, if I could somehow gain traction on that and get if I got 100 people, or 1 million people that gave it $1 a cup of coffee, that would be enough where I could be vice president. We could start going from state to state and fill in the gaps and make it happen.
Right, I'm trying that myself. If I can get 1 million people to give me $1. I will start sending out branded Bacon Bits shirts if that happens. Roy,
I had another question for Roy.
Yeah, go ahead.
And that is, of the current major candidates, who is the most reprehensible, and why is your answer Hillary Clinton?
That's my favorite question.
I guess as I've taken a really hard comb look at both of them, I have to say both of them are, because I know about the Trump University fraud, how people were frauded out of like anywhere from 15,000 to 30,000. So I can't be a Trump guy, and I can't be Hillary. And I know about the private email server thing that she did, and the people that died at Benghazi, and some responsibility that she has for that instead of the stupid video that she blamed it on. So I'm very aware of. She had compartmentalized security clearance, and that's the highest level. And here she is using a private server. God knows how many of our CIA and intelligence agents that have died because of her just sending this stuff out on on our own private server. So, and the trillions of dollars of wasted information that went in the wrong hands. So there's so many things. So I would have to say they both equally are not good. they're both. It's just one of the things I emphasize too. Out of 360 million Americans, we should have thousands of legitimate candidates for president right now. And I just have to ask the question. I know Obama, it cost $1 billion for him to be elected in 2012, but I would love to see just thousands along with me running for president.
Well, if I could make a suggestion, there's an author you might want to look up who has some interesting ideas and has some very centrist notions. His name's Chuck Tingle. He might be someone worth considering for, if not a vice presidency slot, although that should maybe be an option, as someone to help get the word out to his readership.
Yeah, that'd be great. Do you have you're welcome to have him contact me. Feel free to pass on my contact info. Love to talk to him.
Now, Roy, I assume if you get written in just Roy Bannon and they forget to put the backpack there in the middle, they'll still know who you are on the ticket.
Yeah, I think that's true. We could have another hanging Chad incident in 2000. We definitely don't want to have that. So
there could be another Roy. It could be another Roy Bannon out there.
And Barron, that would be if I got all the votes and they put the backpack out, then it could go to the Supreme Court. That would not be good.
Now, for those of you listening, if you're going to write Roy in, feel free to flip the ticket and write me in for president and Roy in for vice president. I have no problems with that. I would be okay with that. I would appoint the professor immediately the Secretary of Discrimination Policy. And you know what? Maybe I could draft. There's got to be a way to draft Warpig into my cabinet somehow. A legal loophole I can find to get him in there. Roy, so tell me this: how many states? I mean, what are you doing as far as campaigning? Are you actually are you knocking on doors, making phone calls? What's the process like for Roy in the coming weeks here?
Well, those are all great questions. I think right now I'm just trying to get on as many shows and TV and different places I can. I've got 65,000 on Twitter, so on My Human Compass. My book has been getting around. I have a website, roybarron.com. You can go check out. Just trying to get as much exposure because I think there is some kind of weird stuff going on with these candidates that are just so lousy between the two of them. And somehow maybe some miracle of miracles that might happen that I think we're looking at July in Cleveland, the Republican convention. I'm expecting something very unusual. I just did see one of the senator, I believe U.S. senator just backed out of backing Trump. So that was a major wow moment here as a Republican U.S. senator saying that because of the judge situation that Trump just got into. So I actually reached out to him and I said, hey, I'll run. I will tell you I have reached out to some very prominent people in the Republican Party, and there's a possibility that I might make it. I did have a lot of luminaries on Voices of Global Freedom. I guess to name drop a little, like Major General Fowley and Lieutenant General McInerney, Lieutenant General Michael T. Flynn. These are people in my Rolodex who I've emailed, and I can call them, and I want to offer positions in the new administration. Claire Lopez, who worked for the CIA. These are people that are in Wikipedia, which I consider pretty prominent. So these are people in my circles. They know me. I've interviewed them before on Voices of Global Freedom, or talked to them personally. So I definitely want to help bring them into very important positions. And my job as president would be to take down the roadblocks that they might have. So these are real luminaries and people that really know about how to protect our country and make it a better America.
Now, Roy, here's an important question. Has anyone ever told you that you look like the guy from Breaking Bad? Not Walter White, but his brother-in-law.
Okay, I just started that show. I've only seen the first 3, so I haven't gotten to
Dean
that.
Norris.
Oh, okay. I've been told I haven't heard that one in particular. I've heard Bruce Willis a lot.
I'm gonna go with Dean Norris, I think.
I'll have to get on Netflix to see that one. I did watch Call It Saul. I really like that series, the lawyer gone
Oh, that's
wild.
a good series. Yeah, that's a fantastic series. I really like that.
So yeah, those are interesting. Netflix is. Oh, I did watch the entire. I'm all caught up on House of Cards with the whole. I really hope that Washington D.C. isn't that bad, but unfortunately, I do believe that a lot of Washington is like House of Cards. So let's hope that it's not that bad. But that's been a really good learning thing. I recommend to the audience, if you're political, go check out House of Cards on Netflix. Also,
you know what I think we got to get you, Roy, is some kind of shtick. You remember that guy that ran in New York for governor with the white gloves? The rent is too damn high. That guy. we got to get you some moves,
well,
something like that.
I have a shtick or a slug line or what it's called backpack, helping carry your haul your load or helping carry your stuff. That's my slug line there.
Nice.
Part of the back.
I guess that's better than I needed this backpack. I lived in the car.
Yeah. So,
It doesn't. I don't. Which slogan did you like, Professor? The first one or the second one?
The first one, I think, is more.
First one, okay, well, you're an academic. I'll take your word for it. What do I know? I don't know anything about that. Hey, Professor, I have to tell you. First of all, obviously we didn't do a show last week. I was in Savannah, Georgia, and that train ride, I've never taken one before, and that was the 5th ring of hell, my friend. That was one of the worst. I don't know what that smell
Amtrak,
is.
right?
Yeah, it was Amtrak. The
They
people,
good.
that train reeked of BO, desperation, and I don't even want to tell you how bad it smelled. I was convinced that there was dead bums in the overhead storage bins. It was horrible. I mean, and somehow I get in line for the train, right? And I know in the back of my head, the one guy who won't shut up and has to talk to me, who is massively overweight and sweating bullets and stinks like he hasn't showered in a month. He's got his clothes in a garbage bag, right? And I knew right then, this is the guy they're gonna fucking seat me next to. And sure enough, they squeezed me in next to that guy, and I had to smell that crap for 30 hours.
What? How long was the train ride?
Well, it was supposed to be 17 hours, but the tree fell across the tracks somewhere in North Carolina, so that was another 3-hour delay. And the train, I got delayed again in Penn Station, so by the time I got home, it wasn't 30 hours. I'd say it was like 26, about 26 hours.
Whoa.
Mind you, I mean, I can make the drive in 16, so it was a stupid decision. And Roy, you'll like this. I believe, I don't know, I'm not an expert on airfare, but here's the thing. I think it speaks to the beauty of the free market, okay? In Savannah, not too many carriers fly out of that airport. There's no Southwest, there's no JetBlue, there's just a couple of them. And as a result, a one-way ticket home from Savannah on an airplane was about $650, which
wow.
is...
Holy cow.
Yes, exactly. And if you fly out of Albany or Dulles or any other place, you're not going to pay anywhere near that where they have all those carriers. But I think because the free market is essentially removed from the smaller airports where they only have a handful of carriers, they can charge whatever the hell they want. And so my brilliant move was to pay $145 for the Amtrak ticket, which is probably a whole other conversation, given that they take federal funding and can't seem to manage to turn a profit despite selling $12 stale sandwiches on the train ride. But yeah, I mean, so that was the difference in price, and that's why I chose to get on the stupid train. But boy, was it a mistake! I'll tell you, I was bleary-eyed, and I felt like I needed to hit the boiling water when I got home. It was miserable. You will never catch me on a train again, I promise you. That's why I cannot be Roy's vice president until he promises me we're flying to debates or wherever we're going to
go. First class, right?
First class. If we can't get into the debate, we'll just stand outside and scream.
Hey, I don't know if you saw Bacon Man, but Nora dropped in on the chat.
Oh, Nora's in the chat? All right. Hey, Nora, how are you? I haven't seen her in quite a while.
I think she's engaged.
Is she? No.
She is refusing to answer that question in the chat.
To who? I wonder to who.
She posted that picture with that ring on her finger.
Oh, he put a
Who do
ring
you
on her.
think? Are you really that out of it, man?
No. It's just that they always like to pretend it's some big mystery. Like they keep it.
Oh.
Ralph thinks he's James Bond for a while. Remember when he used to come on the show and he wouldn't say anything about it? He's real secretive. It was the worst kept secret on the internet.
Yeah.
So, all right, Roy. Listen, you got to have another important. By the way, guys, we're probably going to keep the show to a strict hour this week. I know we usually like to run over, but the fact is that I've been gone for 5 days and I'm behind on a lot of stuff I got to get done. Roy, can you tell me what's your most important position? What do you think if you were actually to make a debate stage and the moderator said, Roy, what is the most important thing that you have to change about this country, or your most important platform issue? What would it be?
Number one thing is to unite people together. I have a national service program. You can check it out on roybarron.com, where it's actually going to create a lot of jobs. They're privatized jobs. I'm going to get rid of the Job Corps, the AmeriCorps, and the Peace Corps. I'm going to cut a lot of foreign aid, and my hashtag is NationBuildUSA on Twitter and all over the place. 63% of Americans can't afford any $500 bill right now, so we got to bring the money back to really help out. So many Americans are suffering, and it's about keeping our sovereignty, our borders, keeping our. I don't want to see another Kate Steinle in San Francisco. That could have been any of us having fun in San Francisco, and a beautiful 32-year-old lady, and she's shot dead. So get rid of sanctuary cities the best I can. I have a plan to defeat terrorism, and part of it, and also prevent World War III by bringing back the colonial powers that we had back in the 1920s when they controlled the Middle East. So I'd bring back all the colonials. I can get more on another show. I'll get more into it later. But each country, like the United Kingdom, France, and so forth, they would come back and own a port of the Middle East that they used to own back in the day, because things were much better back in those days. And it also gets rid of it solves the refugee problems around the world. So all the refugees get to come back to the Middle East, and they will have to have military governors who are like State Department officials and run by the military. And have a very firm stance with the Middle East. But I actually have a solution, and I believe that some of why we don't have solutions to all these wars that wars we've been is because the military-industrial complex has too much money to be made. They don't want to win anything. They just want to keep dragging them out. And in general, like to sum up, probably the most important thing I can do for America is I'm going to get rid of the kick the can down the policy road. If you pretty much look at everything, education, economy, wars, everything's been kicked the can down the road. And so I'm actually, and as you study me more and learn more of my shows that I do and read my stuff, you'll see that I actually will bring permanent solutions. This is for our children and our grandchildren. In the White House, take down all the pictures in the White House and all the pictures in the legislative and judicial. Every single picture has to come down immediately, and we're going to replace them, all the pictures, with our children and our grandchildren, because we are here for a very short time in our life, and I wanted to make sure that all our politicians in D.C. and in all government in the United States of America constantly look at our children and our grandchildren, because this is what we're all for. This is what we're here for as government type people. So that's what those are very important key things. This national service program is huge. Going to offer people to instead of going to jail, they'll actually get jobs in other parts of the state. And
okay, but here's the thing. I'm going to have to insist that you keep the Peace Corps, and I'll tell you why. I view the Peace Corps as a valuable hippie export program, and I don't want the hippies here, so I would rather the Peace Corps stayed so that the hippies would scatter throughout the world. I'm a firm believer in exporting our country's hippies to other places.
Yeah, I hear you.
Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I guess where we could work this out is make it privatized. I want to emphasize I'm an honest capitalist. I'm not a crony capitalism. There's plenty of crony capitalism, but there's a great grocery store chain called Waco Grocery where people love to go to work there. They actually become stakeholders. They're paid very well wages. there are good forms of capitalism. I want to remind people that wonderful capitalism. It can work when it's done right. Like I know REI is not it's a nonprofit, but they do a lot of stakeholders, and if you pay your $20 membership, you can vote. I'm not saying that they're not really capitalist, but we can incorporate those ideas into good forms of capitalism. So everybody's slamming capitalism, but I want to emphasize there are good ones. I am not a big fan of the crony capitalism, a lot of the publicly traded stuff. So
would you describe your views as are you more libertarian leaning then?
That are outsourced.
Are you more like a libertarian leaning candidate then? You're for smaller government, for example, or how would you deal with the state? How would you deal with a city like San Francisco who consistently violates federal laws by declaring themselves a sanctuary city, whereas the Justice Department selectively enforces rules, for example, fighting against bathroom laws in some states, saying that they violate federal law, but ignoring things like in San Francisco where they clearly endanger their citizens by violating federal law. What do you feel about that?
Well, I would cut all funding to San Francisco, federal funding, immediately. And they're actually violating sanctuary city laws right now, are on the books, but they're not following it. So a lot of these major cities, it's actually on the books. They're actually currently violating these laws. I know Bill O'Reilly on Fox was talking about a Kate Steinle law for a while, and that just kind of faded away. But he didn't really need to do that. All you have to do is say they are violating the law. So I want to protect America. It's all about America first. So I'm concerned about the 63% of Americans that can't afford a $500 bill. I don't want to spend $4.5 billion on refugees who will come here and destroy America because I live with them and they go to jail and they cause all these problems. I want that $4.5 billion to go to our homeless veterans. So I'm all about that, but there is a tremendous amount of federal stuff that I want to cut. That's just bloated waste. I like to use the example right now. The government's spending $400 on toilet seats that you can go to Home Depot and buy for like $20. So that's a huge thing. So I am on limited government. I don't follow the libertarian though. I still would say I emphasize the centrist. I know some of the ideologies of libertarian is good, and but 100,000% a centrist. If that.
Well, so where do you come down on the issue of state? Are you more of a states' rights guy versus federal rule? Do you support states having a stronger say in over how they govern themselves?
Yeah,
because Obama clearly is on the opposite end of the spectrum, where he likes to hammer states into line and basically ignore states' rights. But so where do you fall on that spectrum?
I am a big states' rights guy. I want to go so far as I came up with a brilliant idea that no other candidate's talking about. Is right now for each of the 50 states we have a governor and a lieutenant governor. I'd like to elect a third candidate. For each state would elect a person, and that person would actually have a seat in Washington, D.C. I know we have a very active National Governors Association. I don't know to the full extent of, they do have offices.
It used to be called the Senate.
Washington, D.C. supposedly represent governors, but so I'm a very, very strong state guy. But I also want to say that there have been times when the federal government has to step in, like we would still have segregation if we didn't have the federal government. So there are times when the federal government has to say, hey, we had to do that to the South. And so I'm a big favor of at the appropriate time. So we have to work out a lot more. If I became president in 2017, I would meet with governors like 10 days out of the month. I don't play golf. I don't really do any sports to speak of. My only interest is helping the American people and working through these issues. So I'm going to be working like 15 hours a day in that White House. And when dignitaries come, I'm looking at serving hot dogs and potato chips because I don't want to waste taxpayers' money. So I'm looking at a lot of those types of things. But I'm a big states' rights guy, but I also want to say we got to look at a fine-tooth comb of what needs to be federal and what needs to be state. There's, most of what we really need the federal government to do is our defense, is our military. And what I like to emphasize, if all our military were to quit their office tomorrow, we'd be taken over by Bermuda. So regardless of however people feel about fighting and the wars and the military, if they were to quit, some country like Bermuda or the Virgin Islands, well, we have the Virgin Islands, or like the Philippines would take us over or something. So that's an important point that I always like to throw out there as well.
Um, Now, the most important question that we have for you, Roy, and that all our listeners we ask this of all our guests. Do you really think it's necessary to have hair and eye color on Chinese driver's licenses?
Hair and, well, I think I'll leave that up to the states. I want to answer that personally. However you want to look on your driver's license.
Okay, Professor, hair and eye color on Chinese driver's licenses is a states' rights issue.
Also,
sounds good to me.
However you want to show up and do it, but they got to see your face. I don't want you to have a hijab on where they can't, you can't come up with, and say you're Islamic and you're allowed to wear some kind of head covering and get a driver's license where you can't see your face. I'm against that. That's not right. And,
I like this. It's good.
I would ban Sharia law, though. I have to tell you that because it's violation of constitutional law, and it's creeping up. A lot of Americans might not know, but Irving, Texas, they actually came really close to making Sharia law a law of the land. And so I know this is constitutional law. That's what our country is founded on. So it's ridiculous that we should have to ban Sharia law, but I've got to take an extra measure and just say, okay, we got to ban Sharia because it's not complying with constitutional. So, but that's a good question though about the whole driver's license thing and all that. I do want to emphasize I am a candidate that I won't push stuff to states. Gary Johnson was just on Fox News, and I got really sick. He's the libertarian. He's got about 8%. And he did the round robin with Fox and Friends, and they actually asked him, "Are you okay with gay marriage?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm okay with gay marriage, and I'm also okay with gay marriage. It's been passed by the federal courts." But then they asked him, "Well, what do you think about as a man being able to marry multiple women?" And his response to that was, he said, "That's states' rights," and that's a cop out. And I both heard Donald Trump and Ted Cruz with the gay marriage question. They said, "Oh, it's states' rights," but anytime you hear a politician say push it on states, you got to jump on them because they're the ones who appoint judges. So that's crucial that they answer every single question. If you ever hear a candidate, I don't care for what office, if it's dog catcher or whatever, and they say, "Oh, it's the state should decide," don't vote for that candidate because they're not honest. They're just pushing off. They're copping out on the question. So the other actually do believe it's illegal. It should be illegal for a man to marry multiple wives because that's against women's rights. So that's why I'm not in the libertarian camp, so to speak. There are some libertarian things I'm okay with, but others that I disagree with.
Now, you don't know this, but the only Warpig is still here is because we can hear his Xbox controller clicking. If that stops clicking, then I usually I'll call the authorities and have a welfare check done on him. But I think he's still here. Warpig, do you have any questions? I'm assuming that you might want to touch on some Second Amendment issues. So Warpig, why don't you throw a question out?
I don't have a lot of political questions at this point. I do have a question about campaign strategy. If you cannot get on the ballot in enough states to make a majority of the Electoral College, what will you do at that point as far as running your campaign? Because it will be mathematically impossible to become president if you can't win a majority in the Electoral College. And so what would your candidacy shift into at that point? Would you just call it off? Would you begin trying to work with another campaign? What would you do?
Oh, that's a great question. Actually, one of my good friends, I've been on his show, and he's also been on Voices of Global Freedom, my show. His name is Todd Bubba Horowitz. He's a really good economics guy. He's been on Neil Cavuto and Fox News, and 31 years as a Chicago trader. But he's seeing on the wall, I hate to tell our audience this, is that we're seeing a prediction that our stock market's going to plummet about 80%, and it very well might. Not wanting to really scare you, but it might happen within the next year. So we're telling everybody have at least 3 months worth of food. But to answer your question is, if I don't make president, I'm still going to keep running as what I'm calling an American Revolution 3.0. I'm still going to get up on the podium and say how using quality assurance and how messed up things. I'm welcome to wherever I can go speak to people all across the country, and so I'm not going to give up, even if some mathematically or I don't make it Democrat, Republican, or independent or centrist. I'm still going to be speaking up about this. I put my heart and soul. 5 years I worked on Looking Glass Shattered. I've spent my whole entire retirement blown everything on this because I want to help America make it the country the best we can. You know, I had to get by 1 month with $13 in my account. So I don't have a war chest. I don't have a $100 million jet like Donald Trump has. And I don't have handlers and all that. I'm just this guy running for president who represents the 99%. So my mission will go on no matter what. And you know, it's a strong term, but my friend, I want to emphasize Todd Bubba Horowitz is a very level-headed guy, great guy. You can check him out on thebubbashow.org, see some of the interviews we've done together. These level-headed guys are saying we are headed towards a revolution, and I'm offering myself up as a leader to the next revolution. I'll be one of those guys when that comes down, and I don't want to be pessimistic, but I think unfortunately it might happen within the next year or two. There might be some major revolution on the horizon. So I want to say, you know, let's hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. So make sure you have plenty of medical supplies and at least 3 months to 2 years worth of food.
So I've got a foreign policy question for you.
Okay, good.
What is your opinion on the push to pull the United Kingdom or Great Britain out of the European Union?
Well, I'm all for that. I am against the globalists. I also want to get rid of the United Nations, actually. That's one of, if you read my book, Looking Glass Shattered, I go into rich detail about, well, you know, why we need to get out of the UN. I want to get out, really transform NATO, but I'm all for the United Kingdom becoming their own country. The EU is a disaster. I was just watching a whole video about that, how it's just a big scam. A lot of these EU guys and UN, they make tons of money, but they don't really do anything. And they have their own private shopping malls, and there was just a new thing that I just saw that came out about that. So I'm all about sovereignty, nations, nation building, keeping the United States, keeping our borders. I am a wall guy. I do want to make sure that we keep out people that shouldn't be here, and deporting as many of the illegals as we can, humanely. I call it a Boy Scout camp. I want to make that clear, that we can create these humane Boy Scout camps and then deport them, but have a wall so they can't come back. But I am a big fan of just getting rid of the whole entire EU, because I'm really worried, and not just me, a lot of people, that we'll just become this one gigantic global mess of the world government, and I'm against that completely. And I write more about that in the book, real details of why a global government doesn't work. And so anything we can do to chip away at that, which includes abolishing the EU, we'll go far. So I recommend all our audience go read, you guys have probably all read it, but the book 1984 by George Orwell. That's pretty much what he's saying, you know, running towards a global government. In that section, it was pretty much 3 different entities, and they're all constantly fighting with each other. And that's really the #1 book I'd recommend for everybody to read is 1984, George Orwell.
I would have thought everyone had read that, but as an aside, since college has banned Dead White Man, I kind of doubt that they still teach that book. So on its face, when you say I think everyone should read George Orwell, you sort of snicker, because in my head I think, who hasn't read 1984? But then I realized that today's millennials, that it probably is on the banned book list in a lot of the universities. So I'm betting there's a ton of people who actually haven't been exposed to that book, which is sad.
I have another foreign policy question. Do you think that the conflict in the Ukraine shows that Russia is returning to its expansionist ways under Vladimir Putin, or does the failure of Russia to actually take all of Ukraine and only stop with Crimea and the eastern half of the country show that whatever their imperial ambitions may be, Russia's army is more of a paper tiger at this point?
Well, great question. I want to remind the American people that Russia really is the enemy. I want to also emphasize, and we don't hear this where else, this is exclusive to the show today, is that Vladimir Putin, he raised to the highest KGB levels, and God knows how many thousands of people he personally killed. He stuck, bamboo under fingernails and tortured. Not only did he kill people, he tortured them in order for him to get to the levels he got. So this is the guy representing Russia. I want to mind that this is a horrible, horrific, just a horrible, terrible person Vladimir Putin is, and he's the leader of, a huge, a very powerful, nuclear weapon kind of country. So we have to approach him knowing that, to actually, for anybody to stand in a room with Vladimir Putin, your skin got to crawl to knowing what horrors he's done. So I do see that we have to contain Russia the best we can. They have a huge chunk of East Ukraine. I know they're trying to get the gas pipelines and their missions, but we can't roll over. We have to stand up to Russia and say, you can't do this. And one of the ways we can do it is increasing economic sanctions to a huge amount. We can sanction the hell out of Russia.
Gary, go ahead. I'm going to just cut you off for a second. I'm hearing an echo. I'm not sure where it's coming from. I don't think it's me. Is anyone else hearing it, or is it just me?
Yeah, I heard a bit of an echo.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. Go ahead on with your answer, and I'll see if I can figure out what that is.
Well, as president in 2016, I would definitely sanction the hell out of Russia. I want to make sure, because I know a lot of patriotic people are saying great things about Vladimir Putin. I just described in detail how horrific this guy is, to get to where he is. God knows how many people he electrocuted, he cut off fingers. I mean, I have to go into some detail because I want to show the character of Vladimir Putin. This is not what America is about, the president that we want to elect. We don't hire people that are torturers to lead our country. So when you deal with someone like that, you got to be tough, and you got to be like Winston Churchill in 1945. And I'm going to be that guy. I'm not going to bow down to him like Obama's been doing. And I'm going to, if I do a red line like Obama did in Syria, I'm going to say that's the red line. That was a disaster with Obama. He set a red line, and then later he's like, oh, well, there's no red line, or, nobody. So he had credibility as a commander-in-chief when he did the red line thing, and then nobody followed his red line, or, so that was the downfall of Obama when it comes to a commander-in-chief. And so we need a Winston Churchill now in foreign policy, and I am that guy. I'm not going to put up with this shit from Vladimir and those people, those ruthless, horrible people in Russia and China. China's got its own set of people where they're building those islands in the South China Sea. They're just trying to take over the world. So we got to push back and say we're not going to put up with that. Turn some of these countries into ashtray policy is really stand up to them. So I have a true story. I interviewed Admiral Ace Lyons, who was he's a 4-star admiral. He was head of the entire North Pacific Fleet back in 1987. He reported to Caspar Weinberger, and Ronald Reagan was president. I had an exclusive interview with him. Back in 1987, he was given the order to actually turn part of Iran into an ashtray. An interesting story was that at the very last minute, though, Caspar Weinberger, who was Secretary of Defense, actually told him not to do it. And never knew where the order came from, though. So I've wondered, even here is a 4-star admiral being told to stand down, and he was all set to do it, just completely level it, and he was told to stand down. So I've always wondered, after that interview, it's like I wonder who had a real talk to him, So we are headed towards some pretty nasty times, but we need a level-headed, pragmatic, honest guy such as myself who can look at it like the 99%. What's best for America and Americans, and I take a lot of active listening. I'll be hiring these 3-star generals and these luminaries in all the different fields and listening to them very carefully, and I won't just be based on what I think, but based on a dream team, and do the best I can as the next president. But we do have to stop Russia's aggression. We have to draw some kind of red line. I know in the Crimea, the Crimean people actually voted to separate from the Ukraine. Something like 90%. They went to the ballot booths and they did separate. So that's arguably, it'd be hard to disagree with that separation of the Crimea, because the mass majority of people, and we are all about democracy, voted to become part of Russia. So I wanted to get you guys' opinion about that whole thing. You know, the Crimea separated, but the people did vote to become, you know, most of them were Russian to begin with. But what would you do in the Ukraine?
Well, first of all, I want to say I know it's the sneaky little Asian guy who was responsible for the echo, because I can see he muted himself and the echo went away. He just slinked away. He didn't take responsibility for it. I see you, Professor. I know what you did. What did you do? He's looking at me. He keeps muting himself. Warpig, go ahead. Let me hear Warpig's foreign policy so I can not vote for you in 2016.
Well, my foreign policy is that I don't care. It is not my problem what happens in other countries. And frankly, if I was to have a platform, I wouldn't be giving money to other countries. But I so don't care that I'm not going to worry about that. If that's what Congress wants to do, let them. It is not my problem.
You have more of a Ron Paul, let's worry about us and let everyone else sort their own problems out kind of stance. Is that what you're saying?
Formulating an official stance would take more energy than I'm willing to dedicate to the question.
All right, let's rephrase the question. If this was a video game and you were tasked with setting a foreign policy, what would you do?
Let's be perfectly honest. The problems in our foreign policy come because we have elected people who are incompetent at foreign policy, because they're demagogues who have promised goodies to the voters if they elect them. And that is always dangerous. That's what led to the destruction of democracy in Athens, and that is what is undermining undermining our democracy in America. And the fact is, that's not an easily solved problem, because there is one party who has offered goodies for over 70 years, 80 years, and they've consistently seen electoral victories with that strategy. And people wonder why the Republican Party hasn't been responding to the Tea Party. That's because those people in the Republican Party who have been in Congress for 10 or 20 years absolutely believe that if they take the platform that they're going to turn off the federal spigot of money to people, that they will lose their offices. And so they believe that the party platform of their own party is simply untenable, that they cannot be elected running on a conservative platform because Americans will not vote for people who choose to take away their goodies from the federal government. The difficulty is they may actually be right. They may actually be right that the American people are so addicted to money from Washington that they will refuse to consistently vote for people who want to balance the budget, who want to prevent us from hurtling towards a fiscal cliff edge, which we are now currently doing. Sometime around 2030, we are going to be facing absolute insolvency at this rate of spending. It's a difficult problem. The difficult problem isn't because of corrupt politicians. It isn't just because of politicians who lie. I mean, these are all problems, but it isn't just because of that. It isn't just because of a corrupt media establishment who explicitly supports one political party. It's because Americans have decided that what is in their best interests is to vote for money from the federal government, and they are willing to elect candidates who promise them goodies.
Yes, and there is the Warpig rant I was looking for. I'm not sure. Boy, it's too bad you're not running. Hey, we have a comment. One of the listeners wants to know, Roy, if he votes for you, will you also level France, because he doesn't like the French very much?
Well, I hear you. I know France has a lot of problems. I've been following, very carefully. I work with Yoda. He's a real life Yoda. He uses that name because if he used his real name, the cartel would come after him on Voices of Global Freedom. So France has a lot of issues. I know the French fry thing that happened around Bush time.
Freedom Prize.
That was a big thing. I think France is under chaos right now. There's a whole thing about, they do have a lot of Muslim refugees, and something like 6 million. They've got about 10%, so they're just rioting in the streets. So France has its own problems. They're about to actually get taken over. It's just chaos right now. If you watch, you have to go to alternative news, though. You can't see it on mainstream, but there's tons of videos about France. But I'll ask you, why do you want to wipe out France in particular?
I think he's British and he just doesn't like the French.
Can I say this in defense of France? They have a more muscular anti-terrorism policy than the United States does right now. They said they're going to massacre terrorists in reaction to the attacks in Paris, and it looks like they actually mean it and are actually doing that.
I know. That's a little surprising to me. I'm pretty shocked. Is anyone else? I mean,
No.
Usually they surrender if a car backfires.
I've been saying this for years. Europeans are really fat and lazy right now because they're luxuriating in the being able to take 3 or 4 pensions at the age of 50 and retire for the rest of their lives. The problem with the Europeans is you can only count on them being lazy for so long. Sooner or later, you keep on screwing with them, they're going to go back to their old European ways of fascism. And that isn't going to be good for anybody, least of all the Europeans. But they will do it because that's their continental character. If you piss them off enough, if you try and kill them enough, they'll stop being lazy layabouts and go back to building ovens and camps.
That's interesting.
Even the French.
Professor, you must have something to say here. I don't know why you've been muted for the last 20 minutes. What are you doing over there? Are you watching Asian porn again? He is. I don't know. I think he left his computer.
No, I'm here.
What are you doing? Why are you muted?
No, I just didn't want the echo to mess up the stream.
What was the echo from? He must have had the volume up. Anyway,
yeah, I think I have the volume up.
Don't you, what are your do you have any thoughts here, or we we have all your opinions?
Are we out of time? I think we should intervene if our national security is at risk, but otherwise stay out of the business of other countries.
Yes, and yeah, we are just about out of time. So, Roy Backpack O'Bannon, do you have any closing statements you'd like to make?
My fellow Americans, this is Roy Barron. You can check out roybarron.com, and I'm the only person offering a centrist view. I do believe that these other countries like Japan and Germany should be paying for our bases that we have all over the place, in South Korea. So there's a lot of things. I'm all about nation building in the United States of America. Again, 63% of Americans can't afford a $500 bill, so let's cut a lot of our foreign aid, bring aid back to America. Let's make it strong again and bring back jobs. I've got a great national service program to go check out. It'll give people, mom and pop vendors, opportunities to create privatized companies all across America to hire English teachers, rebuild our crumbling infrastructure, fix a lot of our problems. What FDR tried to do in the 1930s, but this is a privatized version of that. I think we're at that point. Cities like Detroit have been bombed out, like a Hiroshima nuclear bomb hit Detroit. So we need to. We're going to turn that into an example city of the future. Completely rebuild Detroit from scratch. People from all around the world are going to go to Detroit. We'll lay out cabling and make it a really advanced and use that Hyperloop technology that I love and bring in a lot of IT jobs into Detroit. Just completely transform it. So we have a lot of opportunity to make America great.
I think the key to a Detroit renewal is to bring in some high-tech policing options.
Like RoboCop.
Well, they have done that actually in Camden, New Jersey. Pretty much everything you do on the streets of Camden is on video. I mean, and it's constantly monitored by police. So they've essentially already got that in Camden going on there. And they have seen a huge correction in crime issues. So yeah, but we have a lot of opportunities. So from the chaos that has happened over the last 20 years, and I'm not happy where we are, but let's focus on today and tomorrow. If you vote for Roy Barron, put it on the ballot, or see me on a lot more shows. Reach out to me. You can find me. Send me an email, Global Freedom Net. Call me at 442-224-4094. I'm looking to get on more shows and TV and email. Get out there far and wide, and if you have an event somewhere in some part of the U.S., I'll try to make it out there on the Greyhound bus and tickets. Those however I can make it out to visit you and see your hometown and meet you personally in my own town hall meeting. So let's go for the 99% candidate, which I am. I'm the only one out there, and you can find some of my endorsements. Just Google Roy Backpack Baron. You'll see people from all across America have been endorsing my candidacy for your president. So, and check out my book, Looking Glass Shattered. It's on Amazon, both Kindle and paperback. You'll really like that book because it's all about fixing America. So thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate you guys, and
All right.
love to come back another time. We can kick the tires again, so to speak.
All right, great. I will be back. We will all be back next week at 8 o'clock. As in my closing statement, I will say if Roy picks me as vice president, I will make sure that we keep our hippie export programs in place. I will not allow the Peace Corps to be disbanded. In fact, my entire slogan would be export as many hippies as possible and free bacon for as many people as we can afford to give free bacon to, especially in maybe some of these refugee camps. I think they'd really love free bacon. Other than that, we will be back next week at 8 o'clock as usual. We only missed the one show. We've been done pretty good, Professor. We only missed one show here and there, maybe twice in the past 4 months.
I know, it's been pretty good.
Yeah, it has been pretty good, so if you want to tune in next week to hear Warpig click away on his controllers, remember, never Warpig, hashtag never Warpig. We will see you all next week. Roy, thank you very much for coming on. You have yourself a great day.
All right, you too. Have a great week.
All right, buddy. Bye-bye.
Bye.